everybody. Somewhat happy. I mean, I'm still happy in my personal life, at least. Wednesday. It's a weird Wednesday. It's a wacky Wednesday in the world of American governance, and we've got a lot to unpack on the stream today. Trust me, we will be covering all of it, but mostly I'm just excited to see all of your beautiful names coming up in our live chat across platforms today. If you didn't already see some of the videos that I've posted on YouTube Shorts and on TikTok and on Instagram Reels, I'm pissed. I'm not having a great day as an American, to be honest. And I think most people with ideological consistency aren't having a great day as Americans, to be honest with you, because in case you guys haven't already seen the news, the House of Representatives has overwhelmingly voted this morning on Capitol Hill, essentially to potentially in the future ban TikTok. And there's a lot of confusion out there as to what this means. There's a lot of confusion as to the contents of the bill itself, but also a lot of misconceptions about why TikTok supposedly imminently needed to be banned right this very second in the United States. So we're going to be covering all of it on the stream. And then, depending on my mood, I might get a little spicy with some of the people out there, you know, in the world of politics who claim that they support freedom of expression and freedom of speech. They claim that they support businesses. They claim that they support entrepreneurship and competition in the marketplace, free enterprise and capitalism. But then they don't actually when crap hits the fan and the rubber meets the road. So they need a little bit of an opportunity to receive a public lashing for not supporting any of the values that they specifically say that they focus on and support every single day. I'm in this like really weird mood, really weird space today because I'm annoyed. I'm angry at our government, which is literally nothing new. I'm angry at the government every day, but mostly I'm just kind of shocked, to be honest with you, about how little critical thinking even people who seek truth and critically think every day have on this subject. So we're going to cover it all. Have no fear. As we're jumping into the stream today, I'm really curious, do you guys support the idea of a ban on TikTok? Or is this something that you're really angry and concerned about? Let me know in the chat so that we can say hi to a few people as we're kicking off the stream today. And especially if you are a first-time viewer, let us know who you are and where you're watching from so that we can say hello to you. While you guys are typing in the chat, putting it right down below or right off to the side, depending on where you're watching. If you haven't already hit the like button on this stream, please do so. That might look like a thumbs up or a, I'm getting better at the Gen Z heart button. We're going to get as many people in here in the conversation as possible when you guys do that. And most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you guys are watching. I am a totally independent creator. This is not paid for by any multi-zillion dollar media company. I am a chick sitting in the spare bedroom of her house. So when you guys hit follow or subscribe, it makes the biggest difference in the world to help us grow our communities. We've got great viewership over on Rumble today. So let's start over there in our chat. We've got John Best and Old Man Trucker watching. We've got Rhett watching. And Tiny B. Good to see you over on Rumble. On Locals, we've got Alex Redford, Nitty Witty, Tito, M-Rock, Crazy Cat Lady, and more, all jumping in to our live chat. We absolutely love to see it. Over on Instagram, I saw my sister and her boyfriend watching in Spain, which is so cool. Hello from España, you two. I hope you guys are having fun. We've got people in Gainesville, Florida, in Idaho, Ontario, Canada, India, Georgia, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Whoop, whoop. I grew up there for a few years when I was growing up. What a beautiful town. We've got Maine watching, Colorado, people watching in Kenya. So very cool. New Zealand, my favorite country outside of the U.S. And we absolutely love New Zealand. We are New Zealand stans over here. I would move there instantaneously. We've got Rhode Island, Oklahoma, Israel, Miami, North Korea, Ohio, Pittsburgh, North Dakota, Texas, Czechia, Chicago, and more. You guys are the goats. Finally, over on YouTube, Jake is the king and already donated in our super chat. Thank you, Jake. You are awesome. Naruto, Harry, Will, Jacinta, David, Cody, Delane, and more. You guys are the goats, and I'm so, so grateful for you. Okay, let's just start at the outset because I'm seeing a lot of back and forth. Oh, you know what? LOL, somebody actually said they're watching from North Korea. Now all of you guys are like, North Korea? If you're actually watching from North Korea, congratulations. I hope that you do not get arrested because that is a really slippery slope. I totally glossed right over that because my brain is in a million different locations from what's going on in Congress today. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of back and forth in the chat. About half of you are saying, yes, TikTok needs to be banned. I'm fully in support of something like this. Other people are saying I could care less about TikTok. Some people are saying I think TikTok should not be banned. This is a huge slippery slope. Really big issue opening up to other social media apps and video platforms if we are to ban this platform. And so I like that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on in the conversation today. And you guys know I am certainly never quiet about my support for preserving TikTok as a platform. It has not made me a whole lot of friends in the political sphere that I often work in, but I believe it is a very ideologically consistent position to take, and I'm going to explain why throughout the stream today. But I want to say, even if you walk away from this stream and you totally disagree with every single thing that I said this afternoon, that's okay. I'm not here to try to necessarily change your mind. I am here to try to challenge your perspective a little bit and create an opportunity for discourse and dialogue that our House of Representatives sure as hell has zero interest in participating in. So if you find yourself being like, ugh, Isabel, how could you say that? Bear with me, stick it out, keep watching for a few extra minutes before you exit out of this, because I hope that I'm able to provide a different opinion and a different perspective that maybe you're not hearing from people who are talking heads on television, on podcasts, on other live streams, and on social media. So let's just start with what the heck happened this morning on Capitol Hill. The House of Representatives, which is the larger side of the American legislature, I have to clarify because we have a lot of people watching from abroad, passed a bill that could theoretically lead to a United States ban on TikTok. And this has been a long-standing conversation in the realm of American politics for the last several years. We're going to talk about the origins of why this conversation even started in Washington here in just a couple of minutes. But basically, all started because of American social media companies who wanted to lobby politicians to change public opinion in a negative way against TikTok and against the video platform entirely. And literally asinine amounts of money were spent on lobbying opportunities for this and lobbying firms. Insane amounts of money were spent on political campaigns to try to finance people running for office that would support a TikTok ban. This has been a long orchestrated behind the scenes political 4D chess game for many, many years now at this point in the United States. Not a brand new idea, but everybody was a little surprised that this happened in the House of Representatives this week because nobody saw this particular bill coming. What we have been tracking over the last couple of months or so is something called the Restrict Act. That is an acronym, obviously, RES, that all stands for different things. We've actually covered the Restrict Act on the stream at length. We've read it together. And if you guys just go search on my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel or wherever, you will be able to find long videos of us talking about the problems with the Restrict Act. But nowhere in the Restrict Act did it even mention the idea of banning TikTok or anything about the company ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok that people are saying is owned by, operated by, in bed with, whatever you want to say, the Chinese Communist Party. The Restrict Act was instead basically a digital patriot act for the modern age, and it is wrought with problems. It is perhaps the most horrifying piece of legislation, stripping away our most basic liberties and freedoms as Americans, basically completely erasing the First Amendment and our guaranteed freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly on the digital side of things entirely. It is horrifying. And if you've never read the Restrict Act, please take the time to do so. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to do it on the stream today, but go back and watch all of the other streams that we have covered the Restrict Act at length. So everybody thought that was going to be the quote unquote ban TikTok bill because this would create this whole new infrastructure of unelected bureaucrats, namely the Secretary of Commerce, who falls under the executive branch, to get rid of a social media platform because it is in the best interest of national security. But out of nowhere, just after the State of the Union last week, a House committee created and passed unanimously a new bill that was about the ban of TikTok. And this bill, I can't even remember the name of the bill. Hang on. It's weird. It's not the Restrict Act. It's called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. That is literally the longest possible name that I could have ever imagined. But they tried to say that this was all about national security. The reason that we want to ban TikTok, and maybe not even ban is the right word, I'm going to explain it a little bit, but highly regulate TikTok, is because we want to protect American citizens from foreign adversary controlled applications. Obviously targeted at ByteDance/TikTok because it's the only major social media application owned by a country or largely controlled with shares by people from a country that is not the United States of America. And so without saying, hey, we're going to get rid of TikTok, they essentially said, hey, we're going to get rid of TikTok. And this unanimously went through a House committee and then hit the entire United States House of Representatives floor this morning, where there was an overwhelming 352 to 65 vote to pass the bill. So this is all updating in real time. This just happened a few hours ago. Everybody's still trying to get their bearings for what this means and exactly what the legislation has to say. But to answer a few questions right off the bat, number one, does this immediately ban TikTok for Americans today? No, it doesn't. If you've opened your TikTok app today and you're one of the 170 million Americans who uses the app regularly, you can still open the platform. You can still post videos. I posted a few videos today. It's not an immediate ban of the platform, but it is going to require the sale of TikTok to an American company if they still want to operate in the United States of America. While that might sound like a really reasonable request up front, I'm going to tell you why I think it's just a load of crap, to be honest with you, and really isn't even about the sale of the company, but about creating this anti-China sentiment that is good sentiment to have, but is really posturing for the 2024 election here in just a little bit. But this is just the overview. They would have to sell to an American company if they still want to operate in the United States of America. Number two, what was the real reasoning that all of these people were saying they wanted to pass the bill during oral arguments today on the floor of the United States House of Representatives? Not even data security, not even national security. Most members of Congress this morning, if you watched the live stream footage of them testifying on the House floor about this and giving their little stump speeches, most of them said China is engaging in a subversive, covert mission to destroy American culture from the inside out by poisoning the minds of young people through their manipulative algorithm that's destroying cultural norms in America. I have a really big problem with that line of thinking because it's not unique to a company that happens to be based in Singapore. Not China, mainland China, by the way, but Singapore. It's not necessary even for this company to have to manipulate algorithms to change young people's culture and destroy America. We're already doing that to ourselves, and every American-based social media company is doing that to ourselves as well. And perhaps the biggest question, before we jump into all the meat and potatoes of this that I've gotten today, is who was in support of this and who was against it? Because there's been a lot of flip-flopping in the last couple of months. Despite having written an executive order at the tail end of his presidential term to ban TikTok that was later reversed by Joe Biden, Donald Trump came out after the committee vote a few days ago and said, I do not support this endeavor in the House of Representatives. We shouldn't ban TikTok, even though there might be national security concerns, because it's going to only strengthen companies, namely like Meta, who are here based in the United States and are doing all of the same things that Congress is accusing TikTok of. They just happen to be based in America. They are what he called an enemy of the people. So Donald Trump said, I do not support this vote in the House. Because of that, a lot of the MAGA-oriented Republican members of Congress ended up siding with that line of thinking, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, which really surprised a lot of people because everybody kind of expected her to vote against keeping TikTok to vote for the legislation, but she was one of the people who firmly stood against the legislation. And then Joe Biden came out and said, if this law passes, or if the bill passes, I will 100% commit to signing it into law, which surprised a whole lot of people because Joe Biden literally on Thursday just invited like 100 TikTok creators to the White House for a State of the Union viewing party. And there was video footage that was posted to the internet of this party with tons and tons and tons of influential TikTokers where the president of the United States is sitting down with these content creators and telling them, you guys matter. Your voice is so important. You have a combined influence that is far, far greater in reach, scope, and influence than the mainstream media. We're so grateful for you. And then literally the next day wants to take all of those people's voices away. So everybody from TikTok, the company, to creators, to people in the political world have been really, really, really confused as all get out over the last couple of days because it has seemed like there's been a whole lot of flip-flopping about the legislation. So that answers a few of the major questions, but just to give you guys an overview of some of the big talking points that you might still be confused on from this particular bill. This morning, the House passed this bill. I gotta remind myself of the name. The Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act that could ban TikTok in the United States. It has not imminently banned TikTok in the United States, but certainly could turn into a reality in the next few months, unless the app parts ways with its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. It is a major challenge to one of the world's most popular social media platforms, used by, as I just said a few minutes ago, almost 200 million Americans. For the record, there are only 330 million Americans total. So we're talking about half of the United States population that is regularly using this platform, not just for videos, but certainly for news, especially Generation Z, 70 million of whom make up the United States population, where we are primarily getting our news from platforms like TikTok. And even for our generation, we'll come back to this too, TikTok has become the #1 search engine for our generation as well. So this isn't just your silly little dancing in your kitchen video platform that it used to be in 2020. This is a major hub for information, for news sharing, for commentary, for authentic criticism of the people in power that decided to try to ban this morning, and more. If enacted, the bill, which I already said, but I'll reiterate, passed on a bipartisan 352 to 65 vote, would give TikTok about 5 months. That's it. It's very short in the grand scheme of things for separating your entire company from its parent company. About 5 months to separate from ByteDance, or app stores in the US would be banned from hosting it on their platforms. That's the direction that they're trying to take in this. So they're not going to be like tracking your download of the app. They're not trying to say like if you are an American citizen and you're in another country tracking all this. Basically, if you have a phone in the United States, your app store, regardless of what type of phone you will be able to have or use currently, the app store on your phone will be prohibited from hosting the app on their platforms. Of course, because this has only passed in the House, this isn't yet a passed bill in both chambers going to the desk of the president. Now, this bill has to go from the House of Representatives to the United States Senate. So critics of this measure are hopeful that maybe enough public pressure and public opinion could be placed on the members of the U.S. Senate by their constituents who are royally ticked off, and rightfully so, that this bill passed, that maybe it might not pass the Senate, but will only stay in the House of Representatives. Oops, I clicked on something. Sorry about that. Lawmakers supportive of the bill have argued, as I've already said, that TikTok poses a national security threat because the Chinese government could use its intelligence laws against ByteDance. But I highly encourage you to go find documented examples of when the Chinese government / Chinese Communist Party has ever used its very draconian intelligence laws against ByteDance for ordinary American citizens. Please be my guest to go find documented examples of this having happened. You won't. I have done my absolute due diligence in trying to find documented examples, which is why American media has to say stuff like this. The Chinese government could use its intelligence laws against ByteDance, which is absolutely of concern and something that we need to be thinking about and planning ahead for in the future, but is not an existing rampant widespread problem the way that Representative so-and-so wants you to believe that it is. There are countless documented examples of Meta selling your data under the table to the Chinese Communist Party. And by the way, selling your data to Russia's government under the table. So talk to me again about protecting Americans from foreign adversaries, House of Representatives. There are countless documented examples of Twitter/X. I know I'm dead naming, but I will never get on board with calling it X. Of Twitter selling your data and your private messages under the table to our own government, to the FBI to spy on you. So talk to me again about protecting Americans and their private data from overreaching totalitarian governments, House of Representatives. There are countless examples of Airbnb selling your data under the table to the Chinese Communist Party. So talk to me again about protecting Americans from foreign adversaries, House of Representatives. But just because theoretically this could happen with TikTok, even though we know it's happened with American companies doing exactly the same thing, we're just going to ban it. We're just going to ban it outright because we care suddenly about Americans, because the government is here to protect you, kids, because we are here from the government and we are here to help. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I can't. Genuinely, I'm so frustrated with the complete lack of ideological consistency from people who woke up this morning and said, I don't trust the government. They don't have my best interests at heart. They never have, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. And then like 4 hours later, when this bill passes, everyone's like, yay, the government's protecting Americans from foreign adversaries. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. They don't care about you. They don't have any interest in protecting your data. They certainly have no interest in protecting you from foreign adversaries. If they did, they'd be taking a whole lot of other measures to stand up against China. So what is it about this bill that all of a sudden has Congress coming together to link arms and protect American citizens come hell or high water, no matter the cost? I'll tell you my opinion here in just a second, but it is interesting to start looking at the actual breakdown of how each member of the House voted on this particular legislation. Because since there was so much flip-flopping back and forth with different parties supporting different initiatives and different politicians supporting different initiatives over the last couple of years, no one was really sure how everybody was going to vote until it all hit the fan this morning. So if you start scrolling, obviously there are literally 500 members or 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. So it's a long list. But if you start scrolling through this giant compilation of who voted what way put together by CNN Politics, you're going to see a sea of yeses in green down this list. And then you're going to start seeing no's pop up, but it has nothing to do with party lines. And why is that interesting or important to note? Find me one other example in the last 20 years where legislation has passed that didn't have anything to do with party lines on this controversial of a basis. You won't be able to find one. So I find it very telling. This was an overwhelmingly uniparty supported piece of legislation, and I say uniparty quite seriously. But there were certain members of Congress who were bold enough to break ranks, only 65 of them to be exact, but it had nothing to do with their party affiliation. If you start scrolling through and you see these 65 no's, Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona, who's a Republican, voted no. Representative Bishop from North Carolina, who's a Republican, voted no. Representative Bonamici from Oregon, who's a Democrat, voted no. Bowman from New York, who's a Democrat, voted no. Boyle from Pennsylvania, who's a Democrat, voted no. If we keep scrolling down, Bush from Missouri, who's a Democrat, voted no. We saw Representative Kazar from Texas, who's a Democrat, voted no. Clark from Massachusetts, who's a Democrat, voted no. Clyburn from South Carolina, who's a Democrat, voted no. Several abstentions, which is the weak man's poor excuse of saying, I don't want to piss off my constituents, but I also don't really want to follow my conscience. So that's just my personal opinion on that. Davidson, who's a Republican from Ohio, voted no. Duarte, who's a Republican from California, voted no. Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. Maxwell Frost, the only Gen Z member of Congress, voted no, which is shocking because he's been quite supportive of the agenda of the president and has been highlighted by the DNC as this leading voice for the left moving forward. But even though the left and the head of the party, arguably, I mean, I think we can all say arguably because the man doesn't even remember his own name, but the person whose instructions you're supposed to follow as a Democrat in Washington today, President Joe Biden, has said, we should ban TikTok. I want to get rid of it. Maxwell Frost, the only Gen Z member of Congress who's a Democrat from Florida, had the courage to vote no. And so I highly encourage you guys go look this up. See who voted in what way, because it has nothing to do with party lines. Democrat, 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 Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, 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 Democrat. I mean, it's fascinating to me. It just depends on who you are and the personal courage of your convictions. Nancy Mace famously voted no on this. We obviously saw Marjorie Taylor Greene vote no on this, much to many people's surprise. So when you start looking at bipartisan support for this bill, I want you to think critically about what that means, because I'm already seeing a lot of pushback to this in the chat, and I want you guys to respectfully disagree with anything that I'm saying. You are more than welcome to respectfully disagree with anything that I'm saying. We're going to have a lot of back and forth dialogue on this. When you start thinking about bipartisan support for anything in Congress or in politics in general today, our leaders, our politicians, the people we have elected supposedly to represent our interests, allegedly, they certainly don't once they get to Washington, these people can't agree on the fact that there's even a crisis at the border. They can't even agree that that is happening when 7 million illegal immigrants have come into the United States under Joe Biden's term as president alone. When a college student gets murdered violently by disfigurement of her skull by one of these illegal immigrants, and half of Congress won't even acknowledge her name. Won't do it. Refuses to say her name. Laken Riley, by the way, not Lincoln, President Biden. So they can't agree that a border crisis is even happening. They certainly can't agree on what to do about said border crisis. These people can't agree on what to do about school curriculum being in the frickin' toilet, with America leading the race to the bottom on global education standards after COVID forced all of these kids on Zoom. We can't agree on what to do about taxes, on what to do about the federal budget, on what number to put on the next blank check we continue sending to Ukraine. We can't agree about the United States military. We can't agree about funding to certain states. They can't agree on healthcare policy. They can't agree on the definition of what a frickin' woman is, okay? Half of Congress would tell you that the definition of a woman is actually a woman, and the other half would tell you, it depends. So when these people can't agree on any policy issue under the sun, foreign or domestic, when these people can't agree on the most basic, fundamental biological truths about the universe, why all of a sudden are they agreeing in a massive, overwhelming bipartisan vote of 352 people to 65 people that specifically we need to ban TikTok in the interest of national security? Why this bill? Why this app? Why at this exact period of time on March 13th, 2024? Interestingly, these people can't agree on any other national security issue, certainly our border crisis, which we've already talked about, but they can't agree on what to do about the rise of these crazy protests blocking freeways and bridges. These people can't agree on how to handle rampant violent crime and riots rising in every single major American city. They probably can't even agree that there is such thing as a national security crisis on any other policy issue. When you look at China specifically, they can't agree what to do about the Chinese spy balloons. They won't even acknowledge that's even happening. They can't agree on what to do about China buying millions upon millions of acres of farmland. They can't agree on what to do about the documented and verified truth now that Joe Biden has taken rampant sums of money from China, the Chinese Communist Party, and is now the president of the United States. No acknowledgement or agreement or bipartisan cooperation on any of those things. So why now is there such massive bipartisan agreement that China is our enemy, that China is specifically using TikTok instead of spy balloons and buying our land and giving money under the table to the president of the United States to destroy America from within, and we imminently need to ban it? Why now? I would argue it's because it's not actually about national security. It's because it's not actually about China. It's not actually about that. And if you remotely had any ideological consistency whatsoever, if you are concerned about China being a foreign adversary to the United States, which you should be, if you're concerned about China taking action against our government, which you should be, you would realize that if this was really about China, the United States government would not be trying to ban TikTok as its first line of defense against the CCP. Number one, they'd be wildly concerned that the president currently sitting in the Oval Office has received millions upon millions of dollars under the table from China before he was put into office here in the United States of America. So, huge conflict of interest? One would think so. If these people really cared about China, we would be shooting down the next Chinese spy balloon instead of making memes about it on the internet. If these people really cared about combating against Chinese influence, they would stop allowing the sale of millions upon millions of acres of farmland, destroying the American agriculture industry by the CCP. If they really cared about China, they would bring the manufacturing of every single one of our devices home to the United States. But they don't. All of our cameras and TVs and computers and cell phones and every other piece of electronic device that we currently use in our lives are all manufactured in China. If they really cared about China, they would be very concerned that China completely controls the global supply of the mining and refining of rare elements, which, by the way, is what goes into every single one of these devices. But they don't. They don't care. They have zero interest in actually combating China as a foreign adversary to the United States. Heck, half of Congress won't even tell you that China is a foreign adversary to the United States of America, because that would be xenophobic. Most of these people for the last several years have been telling you, stop Asian hate. We can't even call a virus that came from China out of a laboratory, which is now confirmed by the media, even though they censored you on TikTok. Not TikTok, excuse me. They censored you on Meta and on Twitter and on YouTube for saying that over the past 4 years. You can't even call a virus that's from China anything related to China, because that's racist. So these people would never try to say that blanket term, China is our enemy and we need to take action against them. So if that's the case, if China is not really the reason here, if China and fighting China as a foreign adversary has nothing to do with banning TikTok, then what does? Then what is the reason for behind banning TikTok? And you guys might, again, disagree with literally every single thing that I've said tonight. That's okay. I don't really mind the opportunity for great, healthy disagreement. But I think there's a very clear reason that TikTok is trying to be banned. Several clear reasons that Congress is trying to ban TikTok in 2024. The first and most obvious of which is that Joe Biden is posturing himself and the Democrat Party is posturing themselves going into the November elections that they want to look tough against a foreign adversary to the United States. They want to look like they are taking action against China, and the easiest way for them to do that is to say, we are banning TikTok. So it's a campaign strategy, first and foremost. But much more obviously, I think there's two compelling reasons that our government is taking on the opportunity to shut down the fastest growing social media platform in the world, but particularly in the United States. Number one, they can't control the content on the platform, and they're concerned how many people are on it. And number two, follow the money like we like to do in every other political area of policy in America. Who stands to financially benefit the most when TikTok is shut down in the United States? Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook / Instagram / WhatsApp / Oculus, all of their companies that fall under the giant umbrella of Meta. So let's start with the latter reason, that Meta stands to financially benefit from all of this. And then we're going to come back to why they need to control every single piece of information that we ever ingest in order to stay in positions of political power. Remember how I said at the very beginning of this stream that this is not a new concept. Banning TikTok is not a new concept, although this bill came out of left field, literally, and nobody knew where this came from. Well, since March of 2022, almost exactly 2 years ago, Meta, Facebook, hired a conservative consulting and lobbying are two totally different things in Washington, D.C. They're not, spoiler alert. Facebook hired this firm, and I knew people who have worked at this firm over the last several years in Washington, so I find this fascinating, called Targeted Victory. And Targeted Victory is a consulting firm out of DC that specifically lobbies members of Congress. They write legislation. They plant op-eds in the media. They try to create a universal consensus around a certain issue for the clients that retain them. So Facebook retains Targeted Victory on March 30th of 2022, or around March 30th of 2022. This is just when the Washington Post happened to publish this, specifically for the reason that they wanted to push local operatives across the country to boost messages calling TikTok a threat to American children. Did you hear that appropriately? 2 years ago, Meta hired a lobbying firm to change public opinion around the country, and specifically in politics, to believe that TikTok is a threat against American children. Where did that idea come from? Mark Zuckerberg. Not your favorite member of Congress, not your favorite president of the United States, not the political party that you support, the people who would stand to financially benefit the most if TikTok were to be shut down in the United States. Meta, Facebook, Instagram, who has copied TikTok in the Reels concept on Instagram now. How did they plan to do this? They were paying one of the biggest Republican consulting firms in the country to orchestrate a nationwide campaign 2 years ago seeking to turn the public against TikTok. And isn't it fascinating how quickly that was able to be accomplished? Isn't it fascinating to see what 2 years can do to change the tide of public opinion across the political spectrum, across the board? That is mind-blowing to me. The campaign specifically included, 2 years ago, placing op-eds and letter to the editor in major regional news outlets, promoting dubious stories about alleged TikTok trends that actually originated on Facebook, things like eating Tide Pods. TikTok is poisoning the minds of young people because these trends started on their platform, and that's so dangerous for children. For the children, we need to shut down this platform, when actually all of those ideas started on Facebook and Instagram. The Washington Post reported this years ago, and pushing to draw political reporters and local politicians into helping to take down its biggest competitor. These bare-knuckle tactics, long commonplace in the world of politics, have become increasingly noticeable within a tech industry where companies vie for cultural relevance and come at a time when Facebook is under pressure to win back young users. Employees within the firm Targeted Victory worked to undermine TikTok through a nationwide media and lobbying campaign, portraying TikTok, owned by ByteDance, as a danger to American children and to society. They said in this internal email at their company that their entire job was to get the message out that while Meta is the current punching bag, TikTok is the real threat, especially as a foreign-owned app that is number one in sharing data that young teens are using. In other words, is the number one app that teenagers were using, and Meta was really ticked off about. Why was Meta the current punching bag in March of 2022? Anybody want to take a stab at that? You guys probably don't even remember because our news cycle is so ridiculously whiplash that we can't keep track of anything that happens. About 5 minutes after it happens, Meta was, in the words of the lobbying firm they hired, the current punching bag in March of 2022 because they had just been caught red-handed selling your data to the CCP. Selling your data to the CCP in March of 2022. And they thought, oh shit, everybody's going to stop using our platform now, especially because the trendy, hip, cool, young thing to do is to use TikTok. So we better pool all of our resources possible and pay out the frickin' wazoo for this Republican lobbying firm to go change public opinion in the media, to go plant op-eds everywhere that they possibly can, to create a disinformation campaign that TikTok is somehow dangerous for children, and specifically to legally, through politics, get politicians on board to take down their biggest competitor, their biggest threat to existence. This is the opposite of capitalism. This is the opposite of free enterprise. This is the opposite of competition in the marketplace. This is the government and crony big businesses working together to shut down competition in the marketplace and to create disinformation campaigns pointing at the other people saying, hey, they're doing this thing, when Meta was doing it the whole freaking time behind the scenes and nobody ever said anything about it. After one bad news cycle, that completely went away because now TikTok is the boogeyman for data security. TikTok is the evil guys specifically in bed with China, even though there was overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Beyond even just hiring targeted victory, I want you guys to see just how crazy this is. This is a campaign finance website called opensecrets.org that tracks when companies are specifically supporting politicians and their campaigns, as well as indirectly supporting politicians and their campaigns through lobbying efforts. And when you look at where Meta is donating, this is only for the 2024 election cycle. That's it. I'm not tracking any other election cycle. I could go to all cycles, but let's just start at 2024 alone. Meta has spent $835,469 specifically on campaign contributions. That is an asinine amount financing the campaigns of people, largely people running for Congress, who have a vested interest now in trying to work with Meta and appease Meta so that they can get reelected because that was one of their largest donors. But this is where most of their money is actually going. They are the 9th highest ranked company for lobbying contributions in the 2024 election cycle. Meta has spent almost $20 million on lobbying efforts specifically, not including whatever they're promoting in their own algorithm, not including trying to boost certain ideology and hurt other certain ideology within Instagram and within Facebook and within the apps that it owns. But in external lobbying efforts, Meta has spent $20 million for the 2024 election cycle. That was in 2023. They've probably spent a whole lot more as of March 13th of this year, specifically on lobbying. And the top recipients of Meta contributions include the President of the United States. But if you think that it's localized to just the President of the United States, they're also financing conservative and Republican candidates as well. In other words, Meta, who is the number one company that stands to benefit if TikTok were to be shut down, is strategically financing campaigns on both sides of the political aisle and is strategically lobbying through firms both sides of the political aisle to change public opinion about TikTok and to get TikTok taken down as a platform. If you ask me, that's a pretty damning piece of evidence for for Meta manipulating American elections, for Meta trying to change the political status quo in our country to benefit their own company, not TikTok. But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to say Meta might have an ulterior motive or a negative agenda. TikTok has to be the boogeyman for every single potential problem under the sun in the United States of America because we were paid to say so by lobbying firms, by campaign contributions, and who else knows whatever the hell could be going on behind the scenes, because what I just read to you is only what we know publicly. Just a couple of years ago, Meta was fined $25 million for campaign finance disclosure violations in Washington state alone. They had over 800 violations of Washington campaign finance law in Washington state alone. So if they're getting fined $25 million for campaign finance violations in one state, I think there probably is a whole lot more going on behind the scenes in terms of very shady stuff with Meta paying off politicians to make TikTok look bad. Follow the money. We do it in big pharma all the time. In fact, we love to do it in big pharma. We do it for military contractors all the time. And we say, oh no, how corrupt the government is. That's terrible. But we refuse to do it for social media. The way that reports work for members of Congress buying certain stocks is that when they sell or purchase a stock, it takes about a month for us to publicly know about it. I can absolutely guarantee you the 350 some members of Congress, 352 members of Congress who voted for this today, all purchased stock in Meta today. Largely Nancy Pelosi, who has the #1 stock portfolio in the House of Representatives and has become a 100 millionaire trading on insider information, which is legal for them, but illegal for everybody else. Mark my words, a month from today, April 13th, I'm going to be studying all of this and looking it up, because not only does an American company who finances these people's campaigns stand to benefit, but all of these people stand to benefit directly as well. So that's compelling reason, obvious #1, follow the freaking money. Congress does this shady crap all the time. What makes you think it's any different about right now? But #2, I think our lawmakers feel like they have a vested interest in shutting down TikTok because they're wildly frustrated that they cannot control the narrative. They cannot censor certain stories that hurt them in the news cycle. And they're concerned that there are so many younger people who are now the largest voter bloc in the history of the United States of America using this platform. We've already talked about how many people are on TikTok earlier on the stream. This press release was from last year that they hit 150 million American users on the platform. Now it's actually closer to about 170 million people, the vast, vast majority of whom are our generation, is Generation Z. Are people who are not watching cable news programs that have nothing to do with actual journalism and are instead just trying to feed you an agenda. The people using TikTok to consume news and information every day are not reading headlines on Twitter/X, which has about 600 million total users on the platform, which is the highest that they've ever had, compared to a platform pushing 2 billion users, which is TikTok. And it's all an echo chamber of blue checkmark journalists and people who think that they are still culturally relevant on Twitter/X, sharing information and linking to news stories for newspapers and magazines. That's not how our generation is consuming information and media every day. You guys are watching live streams like this. We're watching 15-second videos of somebody sitting in their car talking about what the heck is going on in the world and being honest about it, being vulnerable and transparent about it. To the point that TikTok has not just become, for our generation, a fun, dancing, and lighthearted, non-serious social media app, but it's become the #1 place where we go to search for information. In January of this year, this crazy news story dropped that TikTok has actually become the #1 search engine for Generation Z over Google. So when we're looking up something to eat on Friday night, where to go on vacation, or who to vote for President of the United States, we're watching it on TikTok. We're not searching for this stuff on Google. All of this came out because of a Her Campus study that found that 74% of Gen Z internet users use TikTok for a search algorithm for a search engine, not just a video platform, and 51% favor it over Google, primarily due to its short form video format. A lot of people will hear something like this and think, oh my God, we have to get rid of it. It's way too influential for young people because every single piece of content that is out there on the platform of TikTok is overwhelmingly leftist. It is poisoning the minds of young people. For the children, we need to get rid of this platform. But that has not been my experience at all. And so just anecdotally, if I can tell you a little bit about my experience on TikTok, do I have the same amount of reach and influence in terms of a following that I do on Instagram? No, but there's also no logical explanation for how I've grown so quickly on Instagram this year. On TikTok, I still have several 100,000 followers. I have multiple videos up in the 3, 4, 5 million view range. I have not been deleted. My account has not been banned on TikTok for years. And while it used to be a regular occurrence that if you remotely talked about anything related to gender from a conservative point of view, your account would immediately be taken down for hate speech. Every time my account's been taken down because of an automatic algorithm, I've always appealed it, and it has always been reinstated because I've never really done anything wrong. And I have found that there's this really interesting narrative by conservative and right-of-center content creators about every social media platform that the deck is stacked against us and the algorithm is intentionally designed to punish us, and I can't even have an account on any of these platforms because I will specifically be banned in about 5 seconds. And sometimes that does happen. I 100% want to acknowledge that because I myself have had content taken down or my account temporarily suspended because of COVID stuff on Twitter, on YouTube, because of medical misinformation, and even on TikTok for hate speech. But typically, the people who are complaining the loudest about that knew very clearly that they were violating community guidelines and they were saying something that really didn't need to be said. And it's very, very easy to get around community guidelines on any of these platforms. I am a living testament proof of this. If you're smart and savvy about it, if you know how to say something in a little bit of a different vocabulary, or you can talk around a word instead of saying specifically the exact word that you know very well is going to get you banned. And I say that kindly, but also as an opportunity for a lot of people who work in the same space as me to just be honest about that, because it's easy to gripe and moan and complain and say, I get banned every time I post anything. It's totally unfair and it's stacked against me. I used to look at it that way too, but the moment I got a little bit smarter about it and a little bit more savvy about it, I have grown almost 900,000 followers in like a year and a half on Instagram. I've tripled my following on TikTok. Like, there are easy ways to get the exact same point across, to make the exact same cultural significance, to talk about the exact same issues by just being smart and savvy about it. So I get really frustrated when other conservative creators gripe and moan and complain and whine about how the deck is stacked against them, but they refuse to be a little bit creative as a creator. That's just not the full picture. And if I'm going to be totally transparent with you guys, because I believe in honest authenticity and transparency, TikTok as a platform has reached out to me several times at this point and said, how can we create a better atmosphere for creators like you on our platform? We want genuine feedback from you. We want to make this an easier sell for so many people who don't seem to understand opportunities on this platform. What can you tell us about making the platform better? Not once has Meta done that, ever. Not once has Google done that, ever. Not once has X done that, ever. At least not in my experience. But TikTok has, and even though they have had a lot of issues with algorithmic suppression and censorship and getting accounts taken down, that's not been my experience in the last couple of years, at the very least. So anecdotally, what I'm seeing, not just as a creator, but as a consumer of content on TikTok, is this massive resurgence of authentic, pretty culturally conservative, and even religious faith-based content, unlike anything I have ever seen on YouTube, owned by Google, on Facebook or Instagram, owned by Meta, or even on Twitter. I am floored, inspired by the number of people who are criticizing the government, who are talking about crazy legislation, who are reminding people men are men and women are women, who are sharing their experience and testimony finding God in a completely godless society on TikTok that I am not seeing anywhere else on the internet. And particularly as it pertains to politics, the sense of humor on TikTok is pretty dark and honest and authentic. I mean, it's no secret that young people have a pretty dark sense of humor with Generation Z right now. And I have to wonder how much of this push from Congress to outright try to ban this company has to do with their level of uncomfortability about the authenticity that is on this platform. Because content that works the best on TikTok doesn't work the best on Instagram, Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc. When you're sitting in your car, in the passenger seat of your car after a really long day and you start selfie style recording on a very low quality camera phone, that does really well on TikTok. When you're putting your makeup on in the morning and say, get ready with me to be freaking angry at the government, that does pretty well on TikTok, but it wouldn't on other platforms. The entire rationale for virality on TikTok is centered around very naked, raw, transparent authenticity that no other platform is. It's real people talking about real issues in a very real, accessible format. Whereas to do well on Instagram or Facebook, to do well on YouTube, even to do well on Rumble, you need to be in a very expensive set. You need to be using very expensive equipment. You need to dress a certain way and look a certain way. And that's just not what people are looking for anymore. But beyond even that concept, we know now, even the mainstream media is reporting now, that Congress and the White House have been very effective in calling up their buddies over at Twitter, over at Meta, over at YouTube, and saying, whatever you do, silence any post that is about this issue that makes us look bad. Prime example, the Hunter Biden laptop story. And even if you're like, what is that, Isabel? I've never followed any of that. I've never even heard of that. I'd be surprised if you've never heard of it. But the Hunter Biden laptop story, not to get into all the weeds of it, was intentionally suppressed by this White House and pressure from various executive agencies who report to the president, who called up their buddies at Meta, at Twitter, at YouTube, and said, if anybody posts about this, silence their account. Censor them. Take the post down. Give them a community guideline strike. Whatever you have to do, silence it. We also know now that the government was highly affected in calling up their buddies. I'm realizing this is dating me because if you ask an average Gen Zer to act like they're talking on the phone, everybody goes like this, but I remember landlines, so we're going to stick with this. They called up their buddies related to COVID at Meta, at Twitter, at YouTube, and said, if you remotely even suggest anything different from what we just said 30 seconds ago, you are spreading medical information. You are very dangerous to our country. You need to be banned. Your entire account taken down. All of the posts about that particular subject immediately censored and taken down, or else. So if our government knows they can do that with an American-based social media company, even those who say we're fully transparent about how our algorithm works, we're fully transparent about our community guidelines, but they lied about both of those specific issues until evidence came out to the contrary, I think they feel threatened that they can't do the same thing for a company that's not based in the United States, whose ownership is not based in the United States. They can't censor you as easily on TikTok. So whatever you feel about any potential security issue, that should rub you the wrong way. That should at least get you to sit here and think, that's a problem. You make an interesting point there that I've never thought about. Because otherwise, I don't know how you explain this much bipartisan support for an initiative like this. I don't know how to explain that this is the only topic that Congress can almost universally agree on today. When we can't agree on the most basic biological fundamental truths about the universe, we can agree TikTok is a problem and we need to get rid of it. And we'll tell you it's for this reason, but for the same reason we disagree on every other potential subject. I think it's really about controlling the information that you receive, the information that you can post, our ability to communicate with one another, and the public narrative about culture, about what's going on in our world, about the people in power who rightfully deserve to be criticized, that we have a constitutional, inalienable right to do, to criticize those people. But just because it's been a right in American history does not guarantee that it will be a right today or tomorrow. And they might call it something different when they take your rights away. They certainly called it something different when they passed the Patriot Act. It was about safety, not your rights. We're helping you. We're protecting you. It's not about your rights. They called it something different when it was 2 weeks to slow the spread that turned into 2 years of full-on lockdowns, telling you you're not allowed to leave your house. You can't go back to school. You can't open your small business. You can't go to your father's funeral. That's just about protecting you. It's just about keeping you safe. It's not about taking away your most basic rights. So yeah, the ideologically consistent constitutionalist in me gets a little sick to my stomach when I see almost a universal support for a Protecting Americans from blank, blank, blank act in Congress. Because in my experience, that's never been their vested interest, at least in my lifetime. They're not interested in protecting you. They're not interested in keeping you safe. They certainly aren't interested in national security. If they were, maybe we could have done something about the 7 million people that have just walked into our country over the last 3.5 years. So if I've had to ask before, in the last several years in America, what is this protect you, we're going to keep you safe thing really about? I 100% have to ask that question today too. If I want to remain ideologically consistent, if I want to stay consistent with my values, I need to ask the exact same question today too. If I didn't trust the government on immigration, if I didn't trust the government on healthcare, if I didn't trust the government on the pharmaceutical industry, if I didn't trust the government on COVID, if I didn't trust the government on Afghanistan, if I didn't trust the government on Ukraine, if I didn't trust the government on child gender transition surgeries, if I didn't trust the government on education, if I didn't trust the government on taxes and the economy or any other policy issue under the sun, I should at least be a little bit wary and concerned and skeptical about the true intentions behind keeping you safe by banning what's on the internet or not, by deciding who gets to own certain platforms, because we can control that a little bit better and those people will get us elected back into office. I should at least stop and ask the questions. And the really sad reality is members of Congress certainly aren't asking the questions. They're taking paychecks from lobbying firms and from massive social media companies who are financing their next reelection campaign, reelection effort. They're not asking, okay, if we're concerned about data, where does the data for Americans go? Where does it go? What even is data? Let's define that first. But if we can define it, where does it go for TikTok? Texas, by the way, it has for the last several years, not China, not even Singapore. Your data, if you're using TikTok as an American, which let's be honest, what is your data when you're using TikTok? Your email. I'm pretty sure China has your email already. They make every single one of these things in their country, okay? If they really wanted to have your email, Facebook probably already sold it to them. We have documented proof and evidence of that. But let's pretend for a second we were really, really concerned about that issue of China having your email address. It goes through Texas, not mainland China. Look up Project Texas if you guys have never done any research about that. That's been going on with TikTok for the last several years. Congress isn't asking the question, how would our constituents feel about this? There are literally thousands of videos on TikTok this week of people calling their representatives and saying, please do not take away my First Amendment rights. Please do not take away my freedom of expression in the modern public square, which happens to be the internet. I will vote against you if you do that. They don't care. 352 of them just voted to do this anyway, even if you called and did that. Congress isn't even asking how social media platforms work. They're so old, they don't know how the internet works. They don't know how social media algorithms work, or how those algorithms could be manipulated, or what's even popular on these platforms. They don't know how Wi-Fi works, you guys. These people who have been in positions of power, unchecked positions of power, for longer than twice the time we have been alive, had to ask in the banned TikTok hearings on the Senate side, does TikTok connect to the home Wi-Fi network? They don't know that an app connects to freaking Wi-Fi because they probably can't even define what Wi-Fi is, okay? They're not asking the questions. So you need to. So you need to challenge yourself. Challenge what you're hearing in the media. Challenge the headlines that you see scrolling through Instagram and Twitter and every other social media platform that all of a sudden is the good guys. Challenge your politicians with primary elections and with whatever's happening in November, and call their office and say, WTF are you doing? You don't even understand the internet. How can I trust you to regulate it? Challenge your family members on this issue. But most importantly, challenge yourself. Challenge your own perspectives and opinions. Because way too many people that I really admire, that I look up to, that I'm inspired by, as very intelligent, critically thinking, smart individuals shaping culture and policy every day, as content creators, as podcast hosts, as TV network personalities, they're not challenging themselves either. They are regurgitating talking points that have been in circulation for 2 years because Facebook paid for that talking point to come to fruition. Whether they realize it or not, they are on the side of big tech. The question is, are you too? And if I could say just one last thing while I'm on a roll here, because I'm really ticked off. America doesn't need China to use the most popular social media app on the planet to manipulate algorithms to destroy American culture. We don't. We're destroying American culture ourselves, all on our own, just fine and dandy. I made a video about this on Instagram earlier, and a lot of people were upset by it, but if you take a look around at the general state of affairs in the United States of America today, are you guys not seeing what we are doing to ourselves to destroy American culture? What our politicians are doing to us to destroy American culture? We don't need China to potentially be using TikTok as this Trojan horse to change cultural norms. Our politicians and the people in positions of influence and power in America are doing this for us. Have you seen what's happening in American public school classrooms? Have you seen the books that are being found in public libraries that are just straight up hardcore pornography? Have you? Because if not, you're not paying attention. Have you seen members of Congress trying to legitimize a terrorist organization as legitimate governance structures? Pay attention. Have you seen the President of the United States say that the federal government will pay for any child gender transition surgery for any child of any age because that's progress? Talk about destroying cultural norms. Have you seen the parents that are losing custody of their children in states like Montana because they disagreed that their child didn't have gender dysphoria and now it's not even legally their child anymore? Are you paying attention to the millions upon millions upon millions of dollars being poured into the abortion industry to try to gaslight you into thinking ending the life of an innocent child is somehow women's empowerment and vital women's health care and the only way that women will ever be able to have a leg up in society? Talk about destroying American culture from the inside out. Have you seen basically everything coming out of Hollywood the last several years, promoting every type of degenerate behavior ever known to man? We don't need China to do this for us. We are doing it to ourselves. So I don't for a second buy this whole "it's for the children" line of crap coming from our members of Congress who all of a sudden say they care, but they didn't care 5 minutes ago and they won't care 5 minutes from now. They have zero interest in helping you or protecting you or keeping you safe. They have zero interest in the children. They have zero heart and passion for the children. They just have to make someone else the boogeyman in classic fashion of our government and classic fashion of American political strategy. They have to blame somebody else while they do it behind the scenes. And I'm not saying China is not concerning. Of course they are. I'm not saying China is not our foreign adversary. Of course they are. But I'm saying this entire concocted narrative that came from an American company who stands to financially benefit from all of this that we all didn't trust 5 minutes ago, so why should we trust now? This entire narrative has zero evidentiary support. None. Zilch, nada, nothing. So challenge yourself. Go out of your way to think differently. Critically think for yourself. Don't regurgitate talking points. Don't regurgitate headlines. Don't believe every single thing that you see on social media. Think differently. To end the stream, I want to show you a clip that I really took to heart yesterday from somebody that I wildly respect. We spent a day with him on the campaign trail in Iowa, Vivek Ramaswamy. And if anybody has been ideologically consistent on this issue throughout his entire political career thus far, which I know has been short, but he has at least been ideologically consistent upon it, it is TikTok. And so I want you to listen to what he had to say yesterday, because I could not have said this better myself.
You may have seen that Donald Trump and others are opposing the legislation to force a divestment of TikTok or else ban it. Let's talk about it. Here's the thing. In the United States of America, we don't ban specific individuals or companies. We ban bad behaviors. If there are issues with forced data transfers to foreign governments, we need to ban forced data transfers to other governments.
Thank you. If this was really about data transfer, they would be applying this equally across the board to Meta, to Twitter, to Airbnb, but they're not.
Regardless of who the company is. If there's issues relating to kids using social media and getting addicted to content, we need to stop that for all forms of social media.
But they're not. They're not applying this equally across the board.
Reaching those young kids and stop them from getting addicted. But it's insane that a bunch of lobbyists for Facebook and US Silicon Valley companies are trying to just eliminate one competitor in the name of national security.
Remember what I've told you? 2 years ago, this entire endeavor started.
Apply the same rules to everybody. Ban bad behaviors, not individuals or companies. That's un-American. We're not going to beat China by acting like China. Time for Republicans to get out of the past and move to the future.
We ban and punish bad behaviors, not individuals or companies, if we're serious about being ideologically consistent. I could not have said that better myself. So get the word out, say something, do anything, because the really sad reality is if we don't say something right now about the danger this precedent is setting, that the government can just silence you at the stroke of a pen and blame it all on national security, which they've been doing. They've been doing for the last several years in other capacities too. We're slowly losing our opportunities to speak up in the future. They will not stop at TikTok. Do not be fooled. This is not about China. This is about you. This is about your voice. This is about your paramount fundamental right as an American to freely express yourself. This is about the foundation of our country giving the average person a voice that can be just as powerful, if not more, than the government. This is not even about TikTok. This is about freedom of expression where today's public square exists, the internet. We don't stand on soapboxes on a street corner anymore to make our values known and to challenge people's perspectives and engage in discourse. We do it here. If they can take it away for one platform, they will take it away for everyone else. And we will lose the opportunity to even have this conversation 5 minutes from now. The question is, are you going to let them? The choice is up to you. All right, you guys, before we go, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our sponsor of today's episode, our friend over at Hallow. We absolutely love Hallow. I've talked about it a lot over the last couple of weeks. And they've sponsored several streams throughout Lent, which we are smack dab in the middle of right now. If you guys have never heard of Hallow, Hallow is the largest Christian prayer app in the United States of America. They are absolutely phenomenal, and they're doing a really cool campaign throughout Lent leading up to Easter called the Pray 40 campaign, which I know tons of you guys are participating in right alongside of me. There's some really exciting upcoming content with Pray 40 with people like Jordan Peterson's wife, Tammy, talking about her miraculous recovery from cancer and her conversion to the faith, which I find so, so beautiful. But there's also tons of other guided prayers and meditations from people like Father Mike Schmitz, Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on The Chosen, Mark Wahlberg, and more. It is really, really, really cool, and I have had such a ball with Pray 40. Even if you guys think, oh my gosh, well, Lent's almost over, how am I going to participate in that? They have over 5,000 other prayers, meditations, podcasts, stories about amazing Christian figures throughout history, and more. And you guys can get a 3-month free trial right now by using the link that I just dropped in our live chat. Go to hallow.com/Isabel, HALLOW.com/Isabel. I had a call with them the other day. They said so many of you guys have signed up, which I'm really, really happy about. Truly, I can tell you this app has changed my life. It's completely transformed the way that I bake prayer into my daily schedule and has just helped me reorient a lot of my priorities and like what I want to do every single day. I listen to it at the gym. I listen to it when I make coffee in the morning and right before I go to bed. It has been a game changer for me. So go check them out, hallow.com/Isabel. And as promised, we're going to jump over to Locals for a little while to do a post-stream Q&A. It's been a while since we've done one of those, and I appreciate your guys' patience. We are going on our book tour starting next week, which is super exciting. So we've got a lot of pre-recording stuff going on behind the scenes, but we want to make sure that we hang out with our Locals community as much as possible in a tight-knit group. If you're looking for people who share your values and you want to get to know me a little bit more than what we offer on the stream, join us on Locals. I just dropped that link in our chat, or people on Instagram. As soon as the stream's over, you can go to the link in my bio and join us over there for sure. Before you go, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you guys are watching to help us grow this community one day at a time. I hope to continue seeing you all on TikTok, but the next 5 months could get very, very interesting. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Getter. We will be back tomorrow at the morning. We're doing a morning stream tomorrow. I forgot, tomorrow's Thursday. I'm going to the PragerU Gala tomorrow afternoon, which will be very fun. So I'll give you guys all the stream details first thing in the morning, but we're going to shake things up tomorrow with the schedule. So we'll see you tomorrow back for the stream. Locals, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.